started. My name is Bruce Campbell. I'm the director of the Latino Latin American Studies program here at College of St. Benedict, St. John's University. Tonight's event is the first in a series of 3 this semester. We're actually going to continue this through next semester as well. And this is the first event in our Latino Latin American Studies program series this year on the theme of labor. We hope you'll join us again on Tuesday, October 18th for Dr. Benjamin Narvaez's presentation on Chinese indentured labor during the era of abolition, Cuba, Peru, and the United States in the mid-19th century. And then for our final event this semester on Thursday, November 10th, when artist Bobby Marinas will present Cotton Picker, which is his exploration of the intersection of labor, art, and community. This semester's series centers on the concept of labor. Labor is both an economic category, an input in capitalist economics, as in the labor market, labor costs, etc., and a lived human reality, an embodied position within economic structures, and a kind of creative agency or power. Labor, in other words, is both a thing that can be purchased and an embodied perspective and experience. As a thing, labor has a price and is used like other economic resources to accomplish defined goals, turning a profit, creating and distributing other things, etc. As lived human reality, the economic abstraction of labor becomes visible as the field worker, the barista, the house painter, the construction worker, the landscaper, and the actor and the artist and the teacher. Importantly, there are also forms of labor that are necessary to the maintenance of a healthy community and society, but they're often not recognized as formal inputs for the economy. Raising children, mutual aid, volunteer work, and other kinds of community care that are not transactional. The thingification of labor often includes the unjust treatment of the laboring person. Meanwhile, labor creates and does, which means labor is a locus and form of power. The tension between the thingification of labor and the power of labor is where we begin with our presentation this evening. Our speaker this evening, García, Velasco, will talk to us about organizing for change, the worker-driven social responsibility model. Carlos is a veteran political and community organizer who is currently the lead organizer for the construction campaign of the Centro de Trabajadores, Unidos en la Lucha, or CTUL, in Minneapolis. The CTUL campaign is organizing non-union construction workers to build power and fight for change in the construction industry. Please join me in a warm welcome for Carlos García.
Hello. Hello. Good early evening, good afternoon, buenas tardes. My name is Carlos García Velasco. I am the lead organizer for the construction campaign at CTUL, as Bruce shared with you. I'm extremely excited to be here with you young people. I was told that this Multicultural Center was built because young people demanded that. Is that correct? And I just want to remind you that the role of what young people have played throughout history, change has often happened from the vision and the hard work and the minds and the efforts of young people. And if anybody tells you differently, it's bullshit. So, I'm going to hide the screen here. I have about somewhere between a half an hour and 45 minutes to spend with you here tonight. And what I want to first start out by doing is telling you just a little bit about myself, and then I'm going to share with you like the history of my organization, bringing us up to today more or less. And I'm going to talk with you about the worker social driven responsible model for change. And I want to talk to you, share with you tonight about our campaign and where we currently are and why we need change in the non-union sector of the construction industry. So our organization celebrates its quinceañera this year. So we've been 15 years off and on. And we didn't always operate in an organizing model. The precursors to CTUL were happened In 2005, CTUL began as a project of the Workers Interfaith Network, a nonprofit organization that organized people of faith to stand with workers in fights to improve wages and working conditions. The board was made up of half people of faith and half people from unions, and was overwhelmingly white and middle class. In 2005, when Workers Interfaith Network established a relationship with the U of M Legal Clinic. Through this program, law students would go to satellite sites around the Twin Cities metro area at set times where low-wage workers could come and ask questions about their legal rights, often coming to complain about wage theft. The students would do an intake with the worker, bring the information back to the lawyer who ran the legal clinic to formulate a plan of what they could do, and then bring a solution back to the worker. This model was very service-oriented, treating the worker as the victim and the law student as the expert who will fix the problem for the worker. This new project was called, from 2005 to 2007, it was when it kind of became this place called Interfaith Center for Worker Justice. Okay. We start shifting from that previous model in 2007 or so. In 2007, Wynn hired 2 full-time organizers to do the work of this program, the Interfaith Justice, Interfaith Center for Worker Justice. We view this as the actual beginning of CTUL. As we transition the project from being a service model to an organizing model, focusing on deep leadership development with workers so they develop solutions on their own. Rather than sitting one-to-one with an expert who would solve the problem for low-wage workers, organizers invited workers to come to a joint meeting, and we call this Nuevas Campañas, or new campaigns. Every 2 weeks, where workers would sit in a circle, hear from each other about the issues they face in the workplace, break down the isolation, the shame, the guilt, the pain. They would analyze that and why these common problems were happening, and they would seek solutions together. We ended that relationship with the legal clinic and other allies, and just established a space for low-wage workers, a space where workers analyze the world together on equal footing, a space where workers could fully step into their leadership without interference of power dynamics of the outside world. A space where everyone, organizers and workers together, bring their expertise to the table and we all learn together. A space where we were all teachers and students. A space where workers could gain the tools and self-confidence needed to step in all of the power dynamics of the outside world on equal footing. This somewhat still happens in a campaign called Defensores, or Defenders, where we allow space for people to kind of come in, drop in and say, this is what's happening. We do use popular education. Are folks familiar with what popular education is? Popular education is rooted in the idea that whether you have had access to a formalized education, everyone has a real lived experience. And so we try to create tools to invite folks as experts in their own lives into sharing and teaching their experiences with others, okay? And I'm going to share with you some popular education tonight. So from 2007 to 2010, it was mostly we're being like that worker center. We shift from organizing model to a proactive organizing model in 2010. After 2.5 years of building a base as a worker center, worker leaders who participated in popular education meetings made 3 key decisions. One was to form a membership. The other one was to separate from WIN, the Worker Interface Network, and become an independent low-wage worker-led organization. And the third one is to lead a proactive campaign to win worker voice across an entire sector. One of our biggest fights, and prior to my time there, was like the fight for 15 and organizing janitors. and the target at that time was Target. So there was a lot of organizing, there was a hunger strike, just a lot of stuff that happened in order for Target to be open to sitting at the table with workers. And what it does for workers, I remember a story of a worker who said, I'm gonna sit at the table with the CEO of Target. That must mean I have power, right? And it was because of the organizing and the movement that they were building. And you're damn right he had power, right? Because otherwise, Target wouldn't sit at the table with them. They fought for and won their change, and they unionized. Well, we're a worker center, and unions might be the solution for some, but it's not the solution for everyone, right? So this is just like the precursor to CTUL, okay? One thing that was consistent throughout all of this, their lifetime, was that about 25% of the people who would come in the door worked in construction. And even though one of their main campaigns was organizing janitors against Target, there wasn't anything happening in the construction yet. We also learned that those were workers who weren't here seasonally, they were rooted in Minneapolis, right? So there was an opportunity here, and it was a revolving door around wage theft, right? And you can't go and ask a worker, hey, are you being robbed? Are you being paid well? A lot of times the worker says, oh yeah, I love working here, my boss is good to me, I make a lot, I'm making real good money, much better money than I was. But if you were making, say, $10.50 an hour in Houston, and maybe a couple of bucks an hour in your country, and then you come to Minnesota and someone says, I'm gonna pay you $12.50, or I'm gonna pay you $14. That might seem like a lot of money, but it's not the value of the skill set, and it's not the value of the work that is happening. And just to be clear, a lot of workers come here and they're not looking for problems. They're looking for opportunities, right? And they don't want to bring a lot of attention to themselves. They want to work hard because we buy into this idea that if you work hard, that there will be a reward. But that's also can be bullshit, right? So if you ask someone who has made very little their whole life if they're being treated well, they might believe that they are, even though they're white or non-Latinx counterparts might be making 2 or 3 times their salary, because that's what the job pays. And nothing is built without the working hands. So we are partners and part of a network called the Workers Social Driven Responsible Network. And this means that workers tell the story of the pain and the conditions that they are suffering, and this also positions them uniquely as the folks who have the solutions for these issues, right? So laws and statutes exist in books, in buildings, right? But it doesn't mean that that protection is going to happen for you just because it's there, right? So one of the first things that we did was we organized all of that information with worker leaders. And we call it the Code of Conduct, right? And this is modeled after the tomato pickers in Florida at the Coalition of Immokalee Workers. They said, we don't get shade breaks, we don't get water breaks, they're making us fill up the copete over the top. That's exploitation. If you only have to fill it up level, but the guy who's collecting says, go fill it up to the top. They they see every tomato that piles over the fill line, they're gonna pocket that shit. That's exploitation. These workers were making about $20 a day to fill 100 like laundry baskets of tomatoes. They fought for and organized all the rights and protections that they had. They told powerfully the story of the horrible conditions of their work, about not getting shade breaks, not getting water breaks, about the lead worker having a gun on his hip, you know, about intimidating, brutalizing, sexually assaulting human beings so that we could have tomatoes on our sandwich. They also have to depend on housing with their perpetrators too, so you would have families stacked on one another. And so their code of conduct includes things about shade breaks, water breaks, you know, what is the expectation? They doubled their pay. Right? Imagine working for $40 a day from sun up until you fill 100 baskets. Right? These folks organized a code of conduct and spelled out the conditions that they would accept. And then they did a power analysis, and they started applying pressure and building an alliance. Right? And through their analysis, they come to learn that Taco Bell is the #1 purchaser of tomatoes in Florida. And so there's this chain though, right? You're the picker, there's like a manager, the manager answers to the farmer, the farmer sells to the purchaser, who sells to the distributor, and then the distributor sells it to, you know, Walmart and McDonald's and Taco Bell. So in their analysis, they knew that they needed to be at the table with the person on top, the #1 purchaser. So they started systematically eliminating these layers in between so that they could be at the table with these workers. Similarly, we want developers here in the Twin Cities to see construction workers not as modern day exploitative like slavery. We want them to see them like associates. Like the narrative is, oh, I'm building the town, I'm building the city with my big bag of money, I'm taking the risk, I'm the one who's building things. He's building profits. It's hands and working class people that are building and constructing things, right? Buildings that become universities, might be remodeling someone's home. I spoke with a worker yesterday who was in Rochester, Madeline, where's Madeline? Right here. And he said, Carlos, I'm working on a science building. And I said, Madeline, that's beautiful. Young people get to learn. Your contributions aren't just sweat and time and sacrifice. You give to our community. What you build gives and gives and gives to our community. And when I was younger, like Woodbury was just, it didn't exist. Somebody built something, and then it becomes a whole economic center, right? Folks might have been exploited doing that work, right? So part of the worker social driven model is being informed on the rights and protections that cover you regardless of your immigration status, right? But the #1 weapon that our oppressor has against us is the fear in our own mind, right? So if you tell someone, that's not for you, that's for people with immigration status. Oh, I know I told you I'd pay you $3,000, but do you want to take this $1,000 or not? Because next time I'll offer you $8,000. And when people are trying to not draw attention to themselves, these are the folks, and these are the right conditions for exploiting someone. Imagine someone says to you, I got this great job up north. I'm gonna get you from Honduras to Houston, and then we're gonna go to Chicago, and we're gonna end up over in Minnesota. Oh, and how much am I gonna make? You're gonna make $17 an hour. Well, how will I get there? We're gonna get you there. Where will I stay? We're gonna take care of your housing too. We'll even take care of your meals. That, if I'm dependent on somebody for all of those things, that is the exploitation relationship, right? So now someone's trafficked and they find themselves being woken up, driven to a job site, driven back home. They get maybe one meal, whatever the boss decides to get them. They might be staying in a hotel with 5 other people. This is how it happens. It's you work hard and you'll get this, right? So we have our workers have built out their code of conduct, and similarly to the other organizations in the network, we're working on a librito, which is like a pamphlet or like a in your hand. These are the most important rights and protections that you should be aware of. We've done our analysis, and so we don't need the subcontractor or this subcontractor. We need the developers, not even the general. We need the developers, right? Because the analysis is this: the developer might hire his good friend who's the general contractor, who might, and then we have, in construction, we have all these specializations, right? So you got carpentry, concrete, sheetrock, electrical, plumbing, framers. You got all these layers and levels of how these projects need to happen, right? And what ends up happening is it gets the industry is driving, rewarding whoever has the lowest bid wins the contract. There's barely even any negotiations anymore. They say, this is the job, this is what it pays, take it or leave it. And with wanting to extract wealth and wanting to leave with the biggest bag, it ends up almost guaranteeing that there's going to be some form of exploitation or theft that is happening in order to meet that low bid. So our workers built out the organization, the Building Dignity and Respect Standard Council, where is housed the program, the Building Dignity and Respect program, right? So our campaign has involved workers courageously lifting their voices and telling the story of their experience in the industry, and then organizing themselves. Organizing alone won't do it. It takes effective and good research and analysis and investigation, and then a vision for and a plan, right? So we are mid-campaign right now. We started with about 12 developers, narrowed into 5, and are now have 3 developers. And we're reasonable. You know, the first move, if you don't get paid on Friday when your boss told you he was going to pay you, the first move isn't you go up and pop him in the mouth. Right? First you say, hey, what's going on? I thought I was going to get paid Friday. Right? You gotta ramp up to that kind of more direct type of demand, right? So, and we use tension and time sometimes as an ally, you know. So we announced to the industry that there's 11 developers and we're gonna narrow in on a couple, and we were hoping that it would create some tension for them, right? So our current targets right now, or I like to say the most attractive candidates to take this courageous step forward with us, right? You know, in organizing a lot, we use like war language, and it's like we have to be careful, right? Because then they're like, oh, they're unreasonable. They just want to fight. Our United Properties, which is owned by the Polad family, right, who owns the Minnesota Twins, who has foundations and gives in communities, and they have this public face. And right now they're really interested, and they're gonna change their development portfolio to doing like 80% senior housing. And they have been known to do business with contractors who are wage thievers, right? And the other thing is, like, when you're in the city, it's mostly union, and there's a lot of union work, and as you get farther out, or these smaller projects, is where you're gonna find the non-union worker who's facing exploitation. Yeah. Let's talk about our analysis a little bit of the industry and share with you some popular education. This is a popular education tool because it doesn't require that you have the ability to read. And so I like to, we share this with workers and also our fish drawing, but we just ask the question, what is happening here? So this is a time for participation a little bit. So I'm just gonna say the question out loud and go ahead and say it back. Anybody, if you feel it, say it. What do you see happening in this picture? Have you ever been voluntold to do something? Okay, what do we see happening here? What do we see? Let's just describe what we see.
The amount of money being passed down is getting smaller.
Okay, so you're bringing up who this person has the biggest bag, yeah? And you're saying as these transactions are happening, it's getting smaller. And who has the smallest amount?
The one who is really doing the work?
Okay, so you're saying this person's really doing the work and they're getting the smallest amount, right? Does it look, who's taking the biggest risk here?
The one on top.
That's right. That's right. And what do we see the other folks' position? What do we see the other folks doing? Like two of them are solidly have their feet on the ground, right? So typically what a worker will say is, oh yeah, this person's taking all the risk, they have centavitos, they're getting change, this guy has paper, but these guys have a big bag, this guy shows up once and then he never comes back, we end up dealing with this guy mostly. But their mentality a lot is, I work for Carlos and Carlos didn't pay me. And this is all they want to focus on, is Carlos didn't pay me. And we say, okay, well what happens if you fight and you get your money back, kind of like that one-off? Or what happens if we hold Carlos accountable and he's taken out of the picture? What do we think might happen?
You can get the larger amount of money from cargo.
You might make more money if you eliminate this person? Were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say they'll just find a new Carlos.
That's right. That's what it is. So if they run me out, there's 100 guys ready to jump in this position, knowing the fear and mentality of this worker and understanding this relationship. So we say, okay, we can win your fight, but if you want to make change, who do you need to be at the table with? Who has the most power in this drawing? Anyone?
The guy handing away the biggest bag.
This guy with the big bag, right? And so our analysis is this. When this is the developer and he says, I got this great project and I'm proud of it, this is going to be my legacy project, and it starts on June 10th. They all start work on June 10th. Or they have whoever, if it's that phase of the project, that's when it starts. And he says, starting time is 8 o'clock, lunch is at noon, we get an hour, everybody's working till 5:30, and there's mandatory overtime every other Saturday. When this developer says that, they all listen. So our analysis is that, and then at the same time, no project is built without these workers. So we want them to acknowledge their very own power as well, right? But fighting a one-off wage theft isn't going to change the industry. And if we want to fight for change and real impactful change, otherwise it's a revolving door around wage theft, trafficking, and worse, right? So we want to eliminate these folks, like the farmer, the purchaser, the distributor, and we want to be at the table with Taco Bell, similarly, right? So this is a popular education tool that was created by an organizer artist, and we use this at every wage theft intake that we do, where we talk to workers about winning their individual fight after they lead and win their own fight, then that we can come together and fight for change, okay? Just wanted to share that. You like that? Okay. So now I want to share a little bit about what has happened prior to my arrival on this campaign taking off a little bit. So these are some of the leaders that were here before I came. This is Sergio, this is Franklin. Let's see, who else do I recognize here? Christian. Yeah, a couple of workers here. So this was a march against wage theft. And this is in December 2018, okay? So we did an internal launch of the Construyendo Dignidad y Respeto, CDR. You'll see these words, when we change languages, these abbreviations change, like the Building Dignity and Respect program becomes Construyendo Dignidad y Respeto, okay? So we did an internal launch where we invited our allies, and many of these leaders who you see on these cartulinas here led in this meeting and propositioned allies to supporting their leading this fight for change in the industry. And then this is the public launch. That's what that means. Lanzamiento CDR Municipal. Doug Morg is the director of the Building Dignity and Respect Standard Council. This is an ally from trades, a couple of mayors, and an AG, just, you know, toss it in there too, you know. And so this was the public launch. This is one of my current organizers, one of my old organizers, a couple of leaders here. We see Daniel, Jefferson, Pedro, Maximo, Marvin, Doug. And this is us taking the code of conduct and trying to condense it into a librito. What is the most important thing that you need? And my idea around the librito is like, oh, that guy has that librito, he keeps pulling it out and then he recites his rights, right? He's like, oh, you're not gonna do that to me because this is my right. Like, oh, we gotta get that librito from that guy. That librito has all the power in it, right? But really what I want is I want workers to see themselves as the librito, right? Right? If you have the knowledge about your rights and protections, the book's not the power is you. The power is you knowing your rights and demanding, right? So this was us. We met for 10 weeks during the summer for an hour and it was weird. They didn't want to meet for 2 hours and they didn't want to meet for like an hour and a half or an hour and 20. It was like a weird time. It was like an hour and 35 minutes or something. But we did it the proposition was 8 weeks and we got these workers to do it for 10 weeks straight. And now our librito is near completion. It was hopefully going to the printer so that we can share it with at our gala in October. Now when we wrote the letter to the 11, and you can see our fish drawings here, and this is CTUL's office, by the way. Something really beautiful happened on this day in November. So we talked with the workers and they were like, yeah, write the letter. And our goal was to have about 4 or 5 workers sign the letter. And something happened where the letters were ready and they're sitting on this desk up here, and I took the pen and I said, who's going to be the first to sign the letter to the developers? And I said, because whoever's going to sign it, I want you to come up here and I want you to take this pen and I want you to lift it up. And I want you to tell everyone your why. Why you're signing this letter. And sure enough, Marvin Orozco was the first one up. Right? And something happened in that night, in that room that night, where when he picked up that pen, it was like a flaming sword or something. It was just like, what's going on? He wielded it, and it was heavy. It was ballpoint or something. And he said, well, they told me if I come here, I could be a leader. They told me if I come here, I could have power, and I could build it with you. Right? And he said, and this is why I'm signing this letter. And I could just feel it in my skin. And the next person couldn't wait. Right? Pedro comes up, and he's holding the pen and saying his why. And then Daniel, where's Daniel? Daniel Sanchez, right here. Then he came up. And then Rigo, and then Douglas, and Jefferson, and Abel, and Maximo. And we had 11 workers sign that letter. And they all named their why, and they felt powerful, right? Because there's something powerful about taking a stand. Would you agree? Standing up for your own rights? So this was the internal launch, like I said. And on these two screens on the side, what you're seeing here is, these are our gente from Migrant Justice. They're our allies, and they sent us a video saying we're with you and we're proud of you. And we're all part of the same network, right? The Worker Social Driven Network. This is our gente from Coalition of Immokalee Workers. And they also sent a video. And this was, there's a lot of workers here in the front, some of my organizers, and then some allies. And this happened at Holy Trinity, and this was when allies bought into and accepted the proposition of supporting these workers with each step that they take. This happened in December 2021. This is our viaje a Immokalee. This is our trip to Immokalee. Maximo Gutierrez, organizer Maria, Wilson from Coalition of Immokalee Workers, some of our leaders here. They have a radio station, Revolution Radio, something like this, where they're constantly playing. And right across the street from their office is where the buses pick up workers and drop them off. This happened in April, and we went there to support their action and to learn. It was an exchange. And we brought a popular education exercise back to our organization. Actually, about a handful of them, and we've used them. After we wrote and sent the letters to the developers, then we sent letters to their corporate offices. Only one developer responded, was Yellow Tree. And they sat and they met with our workers twice. And then we shepherded them over to the Building Dignity and Respect Standard Council, where they still haven't signed in. And so the way this works, a developer will sign into the Building Dignity Respect program. And then we as the Worker Center will go to the site, train the workers around their rights and protections. And then if there's any violations, there's a 24-hour hotline that a worker can call, and someone from the Building Dignity and Respect Standard Council will pick up. They'll come and they'll do a quick and thorough investigation. And this is what has not been happening before. You got departments of labor, well, oh, we'll look into it. How many people were impacted? 2 years later, they might have a solution, but that's 2 years later. The truth is, unless there's real and swift consequences, these things will continue to happen. And this is why we saw the need for that other organization. Does this make sense to you folks? So then what we did is we took a delegation of some of our leaders, and as we're moving in from 11 to 5, and then 3 developers, we went to their job sites and we looked who's in charge. And you might not get the developer or even the general contractor, you might find a different group. And we're like, okay, we're here. We already talked to Yellow Tree. We sent them a letter. Let them know we came to the job site. We're handing you this letter. Will you please hand it to the developer? Yes, we will. This is Maximo, I think, and I going into a Doran trailer. This is the press conference. You can see our popular ed tool. We get the AGs talking like you know. Pedro talked about it. Danielle Sanchez. These are our folks speaking about us taking our campaign public. We developed our logo. We had to do a lot of these things, right, to have a solid and good campaign. This is our Asamblea General. We had about 26 workers arrive on this day, and there was more new workers than old members here, which is part of the point of having a general assembly, is that some of the current leaders that are involved can be there, but we also open the door for brand new folks to come in and learn about the campaign. This is us doing a popular education exercise right here. And I asked for the 2 strongest people, someone new and someone old, and I asked them to come and try to lift up this chair, this rack with chairs on it. I said, just don't hurt yourself. They couldn't do it. Then I asked 2 more people to join them, and they tried to lift it, and they couldn't do it. And then I invited everybody to come up and to take a position to lift it. And as you can see, the wheels are off the ground, right? And the lesson was, the immovable object in this case is the developer, and we want to move them into the program. Can 2 workers do it? Can 4 workers do it? How many workers is it going to take for us to move? It's going to take as many of us as possible, as well as a strong collaboration of allies behind us as well. So that's what we did here. And this brings us to our march. This is the march. So the first march was against wage theft in 2018. This brings us to our march for dignity and respect. And now you can see all of these flags. We were talking about art builds, and I swear I spray painted on all of these. Right, so this happened in June 16th. We had a march attended by about in between 300 and 400 folks. We had an intentional route where we were stopping at these developers' projects, saying worker stories, and inviting them into the opportunity to be the first courageous leader to take responsibility and accountability for the harm that's caused because they want the biggest bag, right? So I just want to see how I'm doing for time. Okay, we're just about there. Are there any questions? I can maybe take 1 or 2, and then I'll finish with about a 3.5 minute video. And then if you guys want to kick it for a little bit, I gotta get home soon, but we can talk for a little bit if you want. Is there any burning questions? Is there something that someone has in their gut that they wanted to ask about? A missing element?
When did you first get interested in this movement?
I started organizing in 2004 as a community organizer. And then I did that for about 7 years. I did some political organizing. I helped to unionize some campaign workers. I was part of that. I've done some independent contracting, mentoring and coaching organizers. I like to tell people I don't apply myself hard, and what I mean by that is when I saw the opportunity at CTUL, that's the job I wanted. And it was another ally who was like, Lois, I think this is a good job for you. You want to do new and different stuff. I think you better go check it out. And I was like, I don't know. And so I didn't like put out my resume and just cast it out everywhere. I was like, I wanted this job. And it was, I swear I did 5 interviews. I told the person if I have to come back again, I'm leaving with a check. Because 5 interviews? Anyway. So I entered CTUL in August about 4 years ago. I just started my 4th year. So, all right. So what I want to do is leave you with some inspiration, leave you with the video of our action, and I would like to encourage everyone to ask questions, to stay connected, and the same way that we asked workers and allies, let me ask you, should construction workers have to fight for this change on their own? No? Yes or no?
No.
Right? It's just bad business, it's just wrong, right? And so I want to encourage you to stand for yourself, fight for yourself, but stand and fight with others too. Right? When we raise the floor for those who are suffering the most injustices, when we finally get to deal with my problems, we'll be in a good way. Right? So this is the video that one of my heroes at Immokalee, who built the stage and did art and led meetings, then came and videotaped our march for us. Right? So, just want to make sure. Okay. Oh, whoops, I did that wrong.
I think the volume of the video. Or no, on the video, on your computer.
Oh, I see. Okay, thank you.
Los trabajadores de Eso, aquí estamos por una causa que es dignidad y respeto para los trabajadores de construcción. ¿Quiénes están conmigo? Ahora la invitación es para los desarrolladores, para que se unan al programa BBC, para que puedan crear dignidad y respeto para nosotros los trabajadores. We're going to unveil 3 developers that we're going to be focused on to invite them in, call on them to sign on to BDR and make sure that workers get respect that they deserve in their construction job. Yellow Tree! Yellow Tree is a multifamily developer doing lots of projects in Minneapolis. We've seen them use problematic contractors with a long history of violating workers' rights. United Properties. We have sent letters, we have delivered letters to corporate offices, and now we are inviting you, United Properties, publicly to play ball. Solheim has developed many of the projects that you see around us here. They claim to be leaders in moving strong environmental standards and fighting against climate change. But at the same time, we've seen them using contractors with a history of exploiting workers. We know they can be a leader, not just around climate, but also in ending wage theft and exploitation of construction workers.
Creemos que estamos haciendo esta lucha para que esto mejore. Por eso venimos invitando a los desarrolladores a que firmen el programa de BDC para que todos los trabajadores podamos ser tratados con dignidad y respeto.
In union construction, you get better provided family wages, health care, and retirement. And when a developer allows contractors to steal workers' hard-earned wages, it harms everyone in the industry, union and non-union. We march here with you today and say that we will not allow it on our watch.
Que hoy en día, ¿verdad?, están haciendo historia hoy aquí en Minneapolis, lanzando esta campaña con estos grandes desarrolladores que igual que los grandes corporaciones negaban esa responsabilidad que saben que tienen y que no quieren comprometerse a hacer esos cambios. Estamos con ustedes y queremos una sola cosa, que aquí nada más cualquier trabajador, sea de cualquier trabajo, construcción, lechería, de las polleras, de donde sea, solamente tengan un solo idioma, que es el idioma de la justicia, es el idioma de seguir luchando, de seguir pidiendo justicia para todos los trabajadores.
Estamos aquí, seremos un desconocido para muchos, pero un desconocido que quiere un cambio para la industria. Es por eso que estamos aquí luchando y nunca se rindan, por favor, sigamos adelante con esto.
Que todos se unan, aunque no trabajen en la construcción, pero yo sé que uno de los trabajadores de construcción fue a construirle su casa, fue a repararle su casa, que se unan al programa BDC, porque sin estas manos esos edificios no serían posibles.
Well, it gets me every time. It gets me every time. All right. Well, I think with that, I just want to thank you for sitting still, for your time and your attention, for the invitation for me to come and share with you a little bit about our work. And I just want to maybe end where I started. Young people have always fought for and made change in our world. Always. It's just that, like, those in power control the narrative, right? So, the first revolution begins inside of you, inside of yourself, right? And so if you are seeing something that isn't right, that doesn't sit well with you, there's a reason why your guts are trying to push you to say something, right? And so for our workers, they want to keep that voice suppressed, and we want them to get it out, right? So allow the revolution to live in you, be a part of it, stand up, fight, and create the world that you want, you know, that centers your experience and justice for people. And if you want to get involved with our campaign, we're going to be doing a lot of fun stuff. We do art builds all the time. We do direct action. I would just like to invite you to stay connected, to check out CTUL, and you know, tell them Carlos sent you. Or come there and ask for me, and we'll get you jamming with us, okay? Thank you very much.